then, I'm going to start off with the NFL draft. And I just published a article yesterday on my Substack, Sports Thoughts from Evan. I do articles every now and then. My Substack site is mostly podcasts, but I do articles here and there. And typically it's around the NFL season. I mean, around the NFL draft season when I do a new article. I did try a couple seasons ago, 32 Thoughts, where I gave my thought on, I gave a thought on each game that was played or each team from each week of the regular season. Just wasn't able to continue that. But I named my Packers top five guys who I want to see the Packers leave Thursday with the 23rd pick in the NFL draft. And I want to kind of summarize this really quick, go through my top five, give you my why, but you can find the article, Sports Thoughts from Evan.substack.com, and you can find it there. But my number one guy on my list that if the Packers walked away with on Thursday with is Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. Athletic big man, good lateral speed, good get off from the line of scrimmage. Didn't miss a game over his final 3 college seasons. So very durable. And the Packers need to generate a pass rush. They struggled to generate a consistent pass rush last season. I know you're going to say, but they were top 10 in total sacks in the 2024 season. But most of those sacks happened in a span of like 3 or 4 games. Tennessee, Indianapolis, New Orleans, those were most of the sacks the Packers had came from. Derek Harmon's going to get them interior pressure. He's going to get a guy who can get off blocks and put pressure on the quarterback almost immediately and make a quarterback uncomfortable. I like a rush up the middle. Kenny Clark didn't do it last season. Devontae Wyatt didn't do it enough before and after injury. And I think Derek Harmon, especially with Devontae Wyatt, going to be a free agent potentially after the 2025 season. I think Harmon will be a great replacement there. Now, Harmon does have some issues or some concerns, and he doesn't finish. He struggled finishing in Oregon, and he has a very high missed tackle rate. Concerning, but not something that's going to prevent me from pounding the table for Derek Harmon. I think he would be a great addition to the team. And as I mentioned, he'll give the Packers something in the middle that they've been lacking. And him and Kenny Clark combination in the middle would be great to have. He's 6'4", 313. His 10-yard split was a 1.74. Good hands, long arms. And he's just soon to be 22. And he kind of fits the Packers threshold when it comes to RAS scoring as well. Next guy on my list, and you're going to see a theme here early on, pretty quickly here on my list. The next guy on my list is defensive end out of Marshall, Mike Green. Mike Green is a guy that I'm really high on, very productive college player, had 17 sacks in the 2024 season. Yes, I get the competition is a little concerning because he was at Marshall. He transferred there from Virginia, but it's still impressive numbers. Good bend, good speed, acceleration off the edge. He does lack elite body length, and yes, there's some off-the-field issues that have arisen. But if that is behind him, the Packers would be bringing a pass rusher with potential elite pass rushing skills to that defensive line. He's 6'3", 251, another 21, soon to be 22-year-old. And he would give the Packers a nice explosiveness off the edge there. I mentioned there's a theme. There is a theme here on what I am looking at for the Packers and what I think they need to do to really become a true contender in the NFC, let alone a Super Bowl contender. And the next guy on my list from Boston College, Donovan Izaraku. Izaraku. Hopefully I didn't say it too bad. But he's another productive college player. He had 16 and a half sacks his senior year at Boston College. He had 8.5 sacks in 2022. Production dipped a little bit in 2023, but he had 2 very, very good years, 20.5 tackles for loss. He had 6.5 tackles for loss in 2023, where it dipped to 2, 14.5 tackles for loss in 2022. He was the consensus All-American, the Ted Hendricks Award winner, ACC Defensive Player of the Year, first team All-ACC, and he led the ACC in sacks and tackles for loss. He is a guy who has very long arms, freakishly long arms. He 6'3", 248, so he does lack some elite size there, but he has, like I said, very long arms. Does need to develop some strength to better match up against NFL linemen, but he has a great spin move, and he's got the ability to knock hands off of him and not allow linemen to get into his body. And he already knows the defensive scheme of Jeff Hafley. He played under Jeff Hafley at Boston College for a couple years before Jeff Hafley went to Green Bay to be the defensive coordinator. So he's a guy who knows what Jeff Hafley wants to do. And the next guy on my list, I'm switching to the defensive backfield, Will Johnson from Michigan. He's a guy that I've really grown to love in the draft this year. There are some concerns over his health. He had a toe issue this most recent season. I think tweaked the hamstring getting ready for the draft. He's had some injury concerns. But here's the thing. I know you brought in Hobbs. I know you have Keyshawn Nixon. I know you have Carrington Valentine. But you lost 3 defensive backs in free agency this year. And he's a guy that will definitely add some talent to that room. He's a bigger corner. He's 6'1", 194. Problem with him, we don't really know a lot of his testing because he has been hurt. But he was a productive player in college. He brings good size, good athleticism along with that production. Had 3 interceptions and 19 breakups in 3 seasons at Michigan. As I mentioned, some injury issues with him, but I think he would be another guy to really add to the defensive backfield room and bring some elite talent. And that's really what I want to see. Correction, my article had a typo. He had 9 interceptions in 3 seasons while at Michigan. So I have to fix that typo in my article. And again, he had great production during his time in college. See, that's why I need to proofread better. I didn't proofread it good enough for apparently, and now it's updated. But with that said, the next position I do switch positions here. I switch to the offensive side of the ball with my next person who I want the Packers to take, who I would be happy if the Packers took, I guess I should say, and that is from Arizona, Tetairoa or T-Mac McMillan. T-Mac McMillan, raised in Hawaii, big wide receiver, 6'4", 213, productive. He, during his time in college, had 213 receptions for 3,423 yards and 26 receiving touchdowns. And he's a big-framed guy. He can get the ball, very big catch radius, I guess I should say. And I like him because of his size, and Packers general manager seems to be very high on him, and he tends to go with type of receivers the Packers like. He's a good blocker, and he's somebody that you can depend on to block down the field. So, concern, ran a simple route tree in college, so it's going to be probably some adjustment to get used to running a full NFL route tree. But he had 4.53 40, 1.58 10-yard split, 10-inch hands, 78 and 1/8 wingspan, and he's a guy that can definitely help the offense this season. And there's 2 receivers I had to pick from, and I picked on McMillan, but the other one I liked is from Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka. He the all-time leading receiver, I believe, in Penn State history. He has 205 receptions for 2,800 yards, had 81 catches for 1,011 yards last year. 2022, 74 for 1,151. And he did he did put up a lot of his numbers at at Ohio State, playing alongside some very talented NFL wide receivers. He worked primarily out of the slot with Chip Kelly, but he can play inside and outside, in my opinion. He played next to Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, and then other potential early round draft picks, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. So you see what he did. He finished his career with the most receptions in Ohio State history at 205 and second most in receiving yards, 30 yards behind Michael Jenkins. And who I compare Ubuku to, watching him with how good of a route runner he is. And I'm not saying he is going to be Jefferson, but Jefferson in Minnesota. Jefferson lasted until, with similar size and similar agility scores and all that, Jefferson lasted to the 20s, got drafted by Minnesota, and he's been one of the top receivers in football ever since. He's a 4.48 40. Hands could be a little bit bigger, but I think he would be a great addition to the Green Bay Packers and give the Packers a wide receiver that they could definitely benefit from. And some names to keep an eye on if you're Packer fans outside of the five that I just mentioned. Defensive end Shamir Stewart from Texas A&M is a name that's been thrown around in a lot of mock drafts, most recently Mel Kiper Jr. to Green Bay. I have some concerns on Stewart due to lack of production in college, but overall, I think Stewart would be a good addition to the defensive rotation. He RAS score was a 10. I honestly don't think he's going to be around by 23. He's a guy that if the Packers really do want to draft, they're going to have to move up to get. I think he'll be a top 10, top 15 pick because of his athletic testing. Other guys, Ma'Khel Williams out of Georgia, 6'5", 267, just 20 years old, currently 15 on the big board, consensus big board, and he's another defensive end. Not a finished product, but a good football player, and has potential to be a game-wrecking force, according to Packers Wire, in regards to talking about Williams. Kenneth Grant, another defensive tackle, this one from Michigan, 6'3", 330, 24th on the big board, and he's a dominant run stopper, and the Packers are going to need to replace TJ Slaton as that run stopper, and he's a guy that's going to be a good nose tackle and potentially might be able to show Kenny Clark the door if he develops the way he could. Maxwell Harrison, Kentucky defensive back, 5'11", 183, but recently weighed in at 194, so that was kind of the concern with the Packers potentially drafting him, but weighing in at 194 definitely could help the Packers a little bit. The Packers could go offensive line in round one, which I wouldn't be a fan of, but they could. And if they do, Kelvin Banks Jr., offensive lineman out of Texas, 6'5", 313, three-year starter at left tackle, can play inside or outside at the next level. And I guess with Jordan Morgan and him and Banks, who they just signed, it'd be confusing. I guess the question would be, where is he going to play? You're basically going to redshirt him for his rookie year. Other guys, Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, another defensive tackle, 6'3", 300, explosive interior disruptor, has traits to be a dominant three technique at the NFL level. He can be similar to Devontae Wyatt, but as I mentioned before, Devontae Wyatt is a free agent at the end of 2025, and then you may not have to spend money to re-sign him, and you can spend that money elsewhere. Matthew Golden out of Texas, 5'11", 191, guy who ran a very fast 40 time, a 4.29 40 is Matthew Golden. But I've seen him mention the Green Bay quite a bit, but here's my biggest concern with Matthew Golden. Is he just a track athlete? That would be my biggest question. You look at guys who can run that fast. You have John Ross years ago, ran a great 40 time in the combine, and he was just nothing more than a track athlete. He's never broken 1,000 yards in his 3 years playing college, 2 years at Houston, 1 at Texas, had 58 catches for 987 and 9 touchdowns, 4 drops in 2024 at Texas. But with his size, and more being a speedster, I don't know if he's the guy I really want, to be honest. But he's a guy I've seen thrown around for Green Bay quite a bit as well as offensive tackle Josh Simmons from Ohio State. I think I already gave my thought on offensive lineman. Defensive back, Jahdae Barron from Texas, 5'11", 194. He's more of a slot guy. If you draft him, he's another guy that can play in the slot. So now you have Nate Hobbs and him and Keyshawn Nixon will probably be playing more outside now, especially with what might happen with Jair Alexander. Nobody really knows yet. And then Jaden Higgins, wide receiver from Iowa State, 6'4", 214, big, reliable receiver, can play the X, can play in the slot, never really drops the football, and he checks the boxes for the Packers at the wide receiver. Big, athletic, and productive. Those are some names to keep an eye on potentially for the Green Bay Packers at number 23. Now, what I think is going to end up happening is the Packers are going to trade back potentially out of the first round, which I know would piss off a lot of people if they do that, because it's in Green Bay. They want to see the Packers take a guy in the first round, and it might be very disappointing to the Packer fans. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't put it past the GM of the Packers to potentially make that trade to get it back out of round number 1 and accumulate more picks. Because we all know he wants to – he's said it before – he wants to accumulate more picks. He wants to get more draft picks. I think they only have 7 or 8, and Goody loves his draft picks. So